Welcome in, guys. We have a very special edition of Baxter Street Boys today. Cole isn't with us right now. He might pop in a little bit. Spring training has started back. He's down there hucking 98-mile-an-hour cutters, just absolutely making guys look foolish down there in Tampa. So it's me and Griff tonight with our special guest, Tate Frazier. If you don't know who Tate Frazier is, you're probably not a huge fan of college basketball, but you need to go follow the guy. Fantastic stuff. One of my favorite personalities in all of college basketball. I hate to sound like a fanboy because you are my guy. But he's with the Figures Network. Are you with the Ringer still? Or are you formerly the Ringer?
I just signed back up with the Ringer. Got my show back. One Shining Podcast. So there you go.
I saw that actually.
Yeah.
One Shining Pod. That was a classic. And then you chipped in on the book, the Duke Still Sucks book.
Right. Wrote a forward. I got about 500 words that I got out of me. That's about all I had. Yeah, it was great.
I'm sure they were very passionate. But Tate is awesome. Go give him a follow. At Tate Frazier, I'm pretty sure. I think it's just at Tate Frazier.
Yeah, at Tate Frazier. There you go.
We're going to talk a little SEC tournament, talk a little March Madness, all that stuff. It's that time of year. I think truly the best postseason in all of sports, and I don't think it's really up for debate.
Yeah, I agree, guys. I'm happy to be here. And look, you asked me to talk about Georgia basketball. That's not necessarily the thing that I always get asked. So I was locked in. I'm like, I'll bring up Travis Leslie. I'll bring up Trey Tompkins. Like I'll talk about Mark Fox. You know what I mean? I'll talk about all of the UGA basketball that I know. And I saw Anthony Edwards in Maui in person. I saw him beat Chaminade 80-77 and hit a 3 to win the game. So those are my Georgia basketball moments that I can point to. But I'm always down to talk about the SEC. And, as someone that loves Outcast and loves the South, the South's got something to say. So anytime the South is talking about sports, I'm in. So here we go.
I don't know if you remember JJ Frazier. He's a fan of the show. JJ
that's
Frazier,
my guy.
GA basketball legend. Yeah, and
any Frazier in sports, I line up and I act like they're my cousin. Clint Frazier, Trent Frazier, whatever Frazier, they're my cousin.
Another Georgia boy. Our only rule is no Tom Crean. We don't do a lot of Tom Crean.
Yeah,
and that is a very fair rule. I will sign up for that. I will subscribe.
Another Georgia basketball trivia. You remember Nemi Djuricic?
Yeah.
Dude, I just bought his jersey off DHK. He's literally my favorite Georgia player ever, dude. Such a dog.
Right. That's the beauty of college basketball too, because there's NBA players or NBA stars, whatever, but then there's guys that are actually loved by the university, right? That's like a totally different conversation.
Right.
And those are the best guys to me. Those are the ones that you're like,
heroes.
Yeah, right. Like for North Carolina, I'm like a big Joseph Forte guy. And people are like, who the hell is Joseph Forte? I'm like, if you know, you know. Like, that's my guy.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like Braylon Bridges is going to be one of those guys for us in a few years. He was one of 3 guys that didn't transfer out whenever Tom Crean was fired. And this whole team is made up of transfers. And I guess we could start there.
Yeah, please.
So, solid year one. They doubled their SEC win total, I think, in January. Doubled their total win total in November, I'm pretty sure. So, there has been improvement, but going to the SEC tournament, probably going to be an 11 seed.
Yep.
Which is okay. 1 game left against South Carolina. Probably going to draw LSU, maybe South Carolina or Ole Miss. We'll see how that shakes out. But those are winnable games. But Georgia has lost to Ole Miss, and they barely beat LSU and barely beat South Carolina. But if they can win those, they probably are going to draw Vanderbilt, because Auburn, I think, is the only other team that can slide into that 6th seed, and they play Tennessee. So it's definitely possible that Georgia can win 2 games. Do I have faith that they will? No, they've lost 7-10. But I think it's definitely possible they can win 2 SEC tournament games, and I think that's a pretty big win in year one.
I think so too. And look, Mike White is legit. Mike White is a good coach. Mike White understands kind of the lay of the land in the SEC at a higher level. And I like the continuity that he has, even though it's the only thing that I don't like about Mike White is that he was at Florida. And I'm someone that's a bit of a traditionalist. And I'm like, the fact that the Florida and Georgia coach is the same, that to me like breaks my brain. But we know what we're dealing with. This is SEC, and SEC football is different than SEC basketball, so I'll let it slide. Mike White knows what he's doing. He's a good basketball coach. He understands, like I said, the higher level of college basketball, which is a good thing to have, and the talent that is here in the SEC that you can bring to a school like Georgia, as we saw with Anthony Edwards. The sky is the limit. And Anthony Edwards was great, but Tom Crean wasn't great. And if you had a coach that was actually trying to coach for college basketball, not just for his own brand and his own, respect or whatever he was going after, I don't know, I guess for TV career to say the number 1 pick you coached, But if you have someone like Mike White who's actually trying to win basketball games, I think you have a future. I think it's encouraging. And in general, I'm not saying that Georgia is going to be a quote unquote basketball school ever, but as the SEC is trying to adopt basketball and lean into basketball, I don't see why Georgia can't be one of those teams that's in the conversation. I watched the Alabama-Auburn game last night, and I was talking to my parents who have watched Carolina Duke games for 40 plus years, and they're saying this Alabama-Auburn game looks like a Carolina Duke game, you know? And this is basketball, right, that we're talking about. So in general, I just think the SEC is taking that next step. Everyone else is going to have to get to that next echelon of basketball. And I don't see why Georgia can't do that, because Georgia has the resources and they also have the recruiting base. I mean, Georgia, the state itself, has a lot of talent. I mean, I even think about guys like a Jaylen Brown. Like, why is Jaylen Brown from Wheeler High School
going to
California, right? Like, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
So why not in the future we make sure that a guy that's at Wheeler High School goes to Georgia? And I think that's an easy thing to ask. And I think Mike White is smart enough to know that, and he can make that happen. So for me, we're just talking about the program. I think it's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and you can tell, too, one of the number one things when you talk about recruiting Georgia is he's got to chase Bruce Pearl out of Atlanta, because Bruce Pearl has been absolutely raiding the Atlanta area.
Right.
And with Tom Crean, too, this isn't, kick Tom Crean while he's down hour, because, we do that pretty often. But, with Tom Crean, we would watch the team, and there was never really an identity. They didn't do anything. They went down on offensive sets, and it looked like everybody was just kind of like, pass me the ball, we'll figure it out.
I remember the whole team was left-handed. I don't remember what team that was, but the whole team was left-handed. I was like, everyone's going left. I've never seen this.
Braylon Bridges, he's one of the holdovers. He's lefty. Caria was another holdover. He's lefty too. And
Claxton, lefty.
Claxton was lefty. Yeah.
Sevier.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Sevier was too. But you talk about the SEC improving so much. It used to be Kentucky and everybody else, and now Bama's a very respectable program. Auburn picks up Bruce Pearl, which Tennessee was good, on and off, and then there was that kind of gray area that they had. But now they got Rick Barnes, and even Gigi Jackson, who's probably going to be a top 3 pick in the draft, top 5 pick in the draft. He's leading South Carolina, and it speaks a lot to what we see Mike White doing so early so far. Is you see guys giving a lot of effort on defense. They're clogging passing lanes. They may not be good on defense, but they give a lot of effort. And we've seen flashes of it. They beat Kentucky. They beat Auburn at home. They have some good wins, and that's something that I think you can build on. And I think there's buy-in, and I think that's what really matters.
Absolutely, yeah. I feel like if you were doing a report card, I mean, and we do like the college pass-fail, right? Like, let's make it simple. Mike White passed. He passed the test. Things are moving in the right direction. I think he gets college basketball, like I said, at a higher level, and they're going to have guys that are going to compete. And with the transfer portal, you don't have to wait around. There used to be this kind of limbo period when you were at college, a college team where you're like, there's a 2-year grace period where we got to get our guys in, and then we'll figure it out from there. But it's like, no, we're all competing at the same level, and we all got these guys from Ohio or from, Marist or whatever it may be, and they're averaging 20 points per game, and they can come into Georgia. I mean, like a perfect example to me, I look at NC State, like a guy like Jarkel Joyner that comes in from Mississippi State, and then now he's averaging, 16 points per game at NC State. They kind of shore up their backcourt, and now they're a tournament team. Like, Georgia's that close to being a contender in the NCAA tournament by just adding a couple transfers. And, then you go from there and you're like, okay, wow, we're a legit team. And when Tom Crean was there at the end, it felt like we were very, very, very far from being a legit team, and like you said, we're not piling on Tom Crean here, but that's just how it felt. It felt very far away. And now it feels like a couple pieces away. And we have an infrastructure in place. And we have a guy that gets it, whatever that means, like whatever you deem that to mean. Mike White gets college basketball, and I think that's a good thing to have in your back pocket.
Yeah. Another thing too, like our fan base, just like we have to get everybody on board with basketball. Like,
right?
It's crazy to me. Like,
it's gymnastics, right? Like, it's football, there's gymnastics.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, right.
It's
the gym dogs. You can't even get a ticket there. I mean, they are sold out, top to bottom.
Packed.
Every single time. And I just don't really get it. Like, why do people not want to watch college basketball and like root for your home squad? Like, but I mean, like, I've always watched Georgia basketball growing up. Like, it's just I've always been a dog. Like, I was like, if I'm going to watch Georgia football, I'm going to watch Georgia basketball too.
Right.
And then
that's how fans should be in best case scenarios, you would hope. Yeah.
Right. And every time we talk about Georgia basketball on this podcast, everyone's like, oh man, don't even waste your time, like whatever. Like, and I'm like, come on, guys, like for real. And I mean, like I'll say last year it was hard. Like I couldn't
Yeah.
even tune into some games because it was so bad. But like this year, like we've had some fight, and I'll say I did get really pissed. What was that? Tuesday night when we played Florida. I thought it was a game that we could win, and I don't know what came out of me, but I was ready to rage. I don't know if you saw that tweet, Jake, that Cole sent out of where I texted him, but I told him to not let me watch the game on Saturday, or if I did, to put me in the hospital, beat the hell out of me.
But that's a fair outlook.
Yeah, South Carolina gave us hell forever. We hadn't beat them since 2016 before we beat them in overtime. We had to come back 20 points to beat them. I guess that would have been about a month ago. I was at the game. But they gave us hell forever.
South Carolina is one of those teams that they fascinate me. You know, like that 2017 team with Sindarius Thornwell and PJ Dozier that goes to the Final Four. Like to me, like that is the perfect South Carolina team because South Carolina can get the talent. We all know that's similar to Georgia, right? There's so much talent in state that if you just kind of hit, your marks and you get enough guys from in state, you're going to be all right. South Carolina kind of checks that box. But in general, if you just look at those two programs, yes, it's great that you have Juji Jackson there, obviously. Juji Jackson, I mean, if he doesn't transfer, he's probably going to go to the NBA draft. We'll see what happens with him because he's, all over the place. I've seen him mocked at 8. I've seen him mocked at 48, and you're like, okay, what's he going to do? But if I'm a Georgia fan, I feel better about the state of our program maybe right at the moment, even though Georgia or South Carolina's had some of these recruiting wins. It's like, okay, well, that's fine and all, but Mike White, I think he steers the ship a little bit more, to a place where we can win games without even the high tier of talent. You know what I mean? Because he knows what he's doing. So that's encouraging. I think as a Georgia basketball fan, you should just feel encouraged. And we're not saying he has all the answers. We're not saying that he got an A++ and he's going to get us to the tournament, but at least we're moving in the right direction because it was bottom of the barrel. As I said, I watched Anthony Edwards, the number 1 pick, play Chaminade, and they should have lost the game. Like they should have lost that game, but Anthony Edwards saved the day. Yeah, I mean that's where we were at one point.
Yeah, and it's funny because some of my buddies of other fan bases, they'll poke fun of me when we lose. I'm like, dude, come on, we won one SEC game last year. We lost a couple bye games. Like I'm fine, trust me. And Mike White is apparently very well liked inside the athletic department, which is more than we can say about other people. Mike White, like I said. Yeah, he gets it. He seems like a very personable guy. And I think outside of his first year, I think Florida went to the NIT. And then after that, he played in the Sweet 16 game like 4 or 5 years in a row. And I'm not saying Georgia will ever be at that level. I think they can be. But with the transfer portal, M.A. Moncrief has been fantastic. Terry Roberts has probably been our best player. He did really well in the portal. It sucks that we had Kyron Lindsey, who was a 4-star recruit, who ended up transferring. I'm not sure really why, but it was in the middle of the season. Yeah, going to Texas Tech, but it is what it is at that point. I have faith in the guy. I think, like you said, I think he's got us headed in the right direction. But since you brought up frisky teams in the SEC, there's one team I do want to talk about. Last weekend, me and this man on my left, we watched this in person. We watched Missouri come out in the second half and probably hit 9 of 11 threes to start the half.
It was nuts.
We were beating Missouri by 7 with like 3 minutes left to go in the half, and we lost that game by about 25. They came out absolutely firing. And I texted my buddy who's a Mizzou alum, Rob Fox, and I was like, what's up with Mizzou? He's like, dude, if we can play like this for 2 halves, he's like, we can beat anybody. He's like, we can beat anybody. And if they do, they can. They had plenty of talent. They can score like crazy. But I think Mizzou's going to be frisky in this tournament. I don't know who they're going to end up beating. I think it is still Bama's to lose. I think A&M can give them a little fight. But me and Griff are both pretty low on Tennessee. Naturally, we hate Tennessee. But
who do you think those guys?
Yeah, I feel like if you're a Georgia guy, you got to hate Tennessee. It makes sense. I think Missouri's fascinating. I've seen Missouri. Like I watched Missouri. I think it was Valentine's Day. I watched Missouri play Auburn and just got absolutely stomped. Yeah. And like you said, like they just didn't make shots. And as you're watching that game, you're like, this team sucks. Like, why do I care about Missouri? And then I watched them, and then I had to check myself because I'm like, I actually just watched them beat Tennessee in the game before in a very close, contested game, and they executed down the stretch. And I'm saying, okay, I get Missouri. They make sense to me. I can talk myself into it. So they're a conundrum in and of themselves. It's hard for me to say that I can trust Missouri, but like you guys are saying, I mean, if Missouri gets hot, they can beat anyone in the country. They have all the talent in the world to do that. They've also been battle tested just playing in the SEC, and that's the beauty of the SEC in general. I mean, that's why Alabama. I know, we all the off the court stuff we have to address when it comes to Alabama, but aside from all that I don't really want to talk about, Alabama as a team is, they've lost one game in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
And that's impressive to me. Maybe a lot of people aren't, buying into it because of the other stuff, but the fact that they've lost one game, and I watch these games in this conference and I see the talent and I see, from game to game how teams can be. I am very, very much bullish on the fact that Alabama will be in the Final Four just because of the way they handled the SEC and the way that they handled the Phil Knight Invitational when they went up there. They know how to play games and they know how to compete, and they can be down 20 points and win. I could see Missouri being in the second weekend. Like if you told me Missouri, Texas A&M, they're all in the Sweet 16 second weekend, I don't bat an eye. I'm not shocked. I'm not blown away. It makes sense to me because they're talented basketball teams. So that really would be my Missouri takeaway. I can't trust them because I've seen both sides of the coin too much, and maybe that's my own fault by having a larger sample size. But they have all the talent in the world, and you could probably talk yourself into 6 or 7 SEC teams being in the Elite Eight. Like straight
one
up.
Of those,
No, I agree.
One of those is I think it might be Kentucky.
Right. Of course. They're the reigning national player of the year. Of course they're in the conversation.
I stuck a fork in John Calipari when we beat them a few weeks back. I said, Cal is going to get fired. We just sent him out with a loss because they were terrible at that time. They had lost a couple games, and we had just beat them at home. And like
the South Carolina game was kind of the end. When they lost to South Carolina, that's when I thought Cal was going to – I thought he really was going to have a problem. But, yeah, like you said, I mean, they were right there.
Time.
And they have
at the right time,
and they have all the talent in the world. And it turns out Severe Wheeler being hurt might be the best thing that happened to them. I mean, no offense, I know, no offense to Severe Wheeler. I mean, led the country in assists last year, but for that team in particular, they're almost better with Case and Wallace being that guy as opposed to Severe. So they're a team. I mean, Tennessee's a team. Like you can talk yourself in. There's so many teams in the SEC. That I can hear the argument for. You make the case, and I'm not going to say that's crazy, because I've watched them play at their peak. You're like, wow, that team is something, and I think Kentucky obviously has the pedigree, and we've seen them be an 8 seed and go to the championship game before. So why not? 2014, they did it. So why not do it again? So Kentucky is always going to be a scary team. And if you're a 1 seed like a Purdue and you get Kentucky as an 8 seed,
I mean, we'll get to Purdue.
I mean, that's unfair though. Like I feel bad for Matt Painter that would be the case. Like the same thing with Baylor last year. Like Baylor actually got a disservice being a 1 seed and playing Carolina, who's an 8 seed. That's ridiculous. Carolina's not an 8 seed,
Yeah, that's the way I felt whenever Georgia made the tournament in 2015, and we got Tom Izzo in Michigan State as a 7 seed. We were a 10 seed, and they made the Final Four that year. I was so pissed.
Yeah.
We put up a fight that game, too. We played well. That was a solid team that we had that year.
It's kind of the perfect spot to be, though. Like, if you're a really good team that's kind of underachieved, is to be that 7 seed or be that 8 seed. Because as soon as you beat that 1 seed in the second round, you're like, okay, well, we have the path of the 1 seed now. Like, perfect. And the same thing, we beat that 2 seed. Great. Now we have their path. I'll see you guys in the Final Four. I mean, that is why I love the tournament, too, because, teams get hot and the chips fall as they may. And then all of a sudden, you're like, wow. Texas A&M's in the Elite 8, and it wouldn't shock me.
While we're talking about teams getting hot, before we get to some sleepers, I want to let you rip for a second. I want to hear about your UNC target because I've seen a lot of Hubert Davis disrespect. The man has been to a Final Four. Yeah. You need to get that out of the way. He also beat Duke in a Final Four, which is something that has never happened. Yeah. And, I just want to hear your thoughts on UNC going into this tournament. Strangely, there is a big crossover between, maybe not strangely, but Georgia football and UNC basketball fans. So I'm sure we have a few that want to hear what you got to say about them.
Yeah, I will say this to you guys. I grew up in North Carolina, but Georgia was my school that I was obsessed with. My parents were trying to talk me out of it. They were like, please just go to the in-state school. But I was obsessed with Georgia. I wanted to go to Georgia. So between the hedges, Sanford Stadium, all that, I was obsessed with Georgia football. When Keith Marshall and Todd Gurley, my North Carolina guys, were like, we're going to go to Georgia, I was like, that was my time, my high school class. I was like, okay, I guess this is the sign. I have to go to Georgia. But all that aside, my Tar Heels, they are the woulda, coulda, shoulda Tar Heels this whole year. That's who they've been. They should have beat Iowa State. They should have beat Alabama. They would have beat Virginia Tech at on the road if Baycott was. It's the woulda, coulda, shoulda. All the caveats. But regardless, you lost 11 games, and I can't make up that many excuses to make that make sense. I think that they are still a team to be reckoned with. I think that they're still a team that could, in theory, win a national championship. I really do. As dumb as that is, I really think that they could. But they have shown me nothing to confirm that that's going to be reality. So that's really where we are. It's I wish it was. I hope it was. It could be, but I'm not sure it's going to be. So that's kind of where I leave it. And if they surprise me again, I will be the happiest person, this side of Chapel Hill / Los Angeles where I live. But I also am not banking on the fact that there's going to be some sort of magical run again, because I don't think Baycott's in the best shape, and he needs to be. I don't think Caleb and RJ are on fire like they were last year, as they need to be. And I think Pete Nance is a 5, but he's playing the 4, and we're trying to make him play out of position. And, there's a lot of little things with this team that are just different than last year. But as I said, anytime that North Carolina's playing anyone in the tournament, it's going to elicit a response from the other team. And a lot of teams go into the game, like Ohio State, right? I went to Madison Square Garden this year. Ohio State plays North Carolina. They're dominating the entire game. They should have won that game. But for whatever reason, as the late stretches come down, Ohio State did not believe that they were going to win that game. And I think that is the one thing that Carolina and a Kentucky and a Kansas and a Duke have in the tournament, is this weird mental belief that they're supposed to win the game, right? And then if you're a team that's not necessarily supposed to win the game, you can almost talk yourself out of winning the game, even if you're the better team. And that's the one thing Carolina has in their back pocket. But I think the ACC tournament would be more of a Carolina thing to bet on than the NCAA tournament, if that makes sense. Like if I'm a bettor, I'm like maybe Greensboro with North Carolina. That's their way to get some sort of salvage for the season. But otherwise, I don't really see a Houston run to the title. But I would love to be proven wrong. So please, Tar Heels, if you're listening, this bulletin board material, put it up there. You will not win the national championship.
Well, they're all huge fans of the show. So they'll hear it loud and clear. You talk about that. It's kind of like that with Georgia football, having that target on your back. When you're the guy, you have that brand name. Folks are going to give you their best shot. But Griff did. He did put the future for North Carolina on the ACC tournament. And I can't lie. I love it because the ACC is kind of wide open. Too.
That was Cole has been big on that. He was like kind of the first one who mentioned it. I was like, no, I like that a lot. Like, so I think we're both on that. The only other team that I really love in the ACC is Miami. I've been on them all year. I've watched them all year. I love the two guards, Nigel Pack and I'm blanking on his name right now, but
Isaiah Wong.
Yeah, Isaiah Wong. I love them. They're such ballers, and there's so many dudes on that team too. Like, they can
Jordan
shoot the lights
Miller,
out.
their small forward is great. Lefty, a guy that's going to be in the league. I think I was on a show yesterday, and they asked me about the ACC, and they were like, "What is your big bold prediction on the ACC?" And I don't know if it's even that bold, but I think there will be one ACC team in the Final Four. I think there will be one ACC team in Houston. I don't know what team that is. You can convince me it's Miami. I think Miami is the best team in the ACC. I think that they, like you said, I think they could totally be there. I could talk myself into NC State being there. I could talk myself into Virginia being there. I could talk myself into North Carolina being there, and I could talk myself into Duke being there. So between those 5 teams in the ACC, I think one of them is going to be in Houston. It's sort of a similar thing. I think there will be one SEC team guaranteed in Houston. And I have tried to talk myself into every team but Alabama, but I think it's going to be Alabama. I'm not saying Alabama is going to win the title, but I think Alabama is going to be in Houston. So, that's sort of in my brain how I look at it. I think there's going to be one ACC team, one SEC team. They're going to be in Houston. Then I think a Big 12 team will be there, and I think Houston will be there. So that's kind of my Final Four as I play it out in my mind. And, if I were to close my eyes, I'd say Alabama, North Carolina, Baylor, and Houston is my Final Four.
I'm not too far off. And speaking of ACC teams, if somebody that could get really, really slippery, I don't know about Final Four, But if Clemson has a nice ACC tournament,
Clemson.
I could
There
see
you go.
them. I could see
They're
them
solid.
getting a little down and dirty with somebody. That would
Absolutely.
probably be to UNC's detriment. So I know you don't want to hear that.
No, I want, at this point, I'm just like, I want the ACC to just go into the tournament and get the same respect that they got last year that they never got carried over. You know, I'm still confused as to last year in March leading into April. All I heard was, oh, maybe the net's dumb as shit, which we all know it is. And the ACC has 3 teams in the Elite 8. And I'm like, yes, that confirms that. In my mind. But then as this season has played out, it's been the same sob story again. But I do think that there is a different tier of Big 12 and SEC. I think the Big 12 and the SEC are a tier 1. And then I think tier 2 is when you get into the ACC, Big 10, Pac-12. Like that's kind of how I map it out in my mind. So I understand it, but in general, this tournament and this year, I feel like, throw the net and all the quads and all that bullshit out, and watch out for Kansas. I said Baylor because I just am trying to be, like you said, a little bit
Kansas
slippery.
might repeat.
Yeah.
Oh, Kansas repeating is like the most. If I was someone that had to get the money, like if I was struggling and I'm like I have to win this, I have to win the national championship pick. I go Kansas all day, every day. I mean, they are they have everything. The only thing I worry about is their depth, but who cares? You know what I mean? That's like getting nitpicky at that point where we're talking about depth. It's like Kansas has it figured out. So
me and Cole and Griff we're in a text chain with a couple guys, and we were talking about it was that Kansas Baylor game when Baylor just shot lights out in the first half. Right. I was like, dude, I'm live in Kansas at half. Baylor is not shooting 87% from 3 again in the second half, and of course Kansas comes out and absolutely drubs them by like 15 to end the game, and I felt like the smartest man alive.
Well, yeah, I love that. And it's also, we've seen Kansas, they were down 16 last year in the title game and came back and won. So, and this is what this team does. Like they're down 20 points and Kansas is like, okay, it's still a game, right? Most college teams, they're down 20. They're like, okay, game over. We'll see you tomorrow. And that's not how Kansas operates. So that's the scary thing too, where you can't put these guys away and they don't expect to lose. So Kansas is very scary.
Let's do a little. Let's get negative for a second. We'll go back to some believers here in a second. Who do you not believe in, and why is it Purdue?
Ooh, I mean, great question. Look, I would love Purdue mainly because I like Matt Painter.
I do as well.
Right? How could you not? Matt Painter's a great basketball coach. But it's just not the
formula.
I know it's not. It's not the formula, and
it's like Luka Garza at Iowa. It's not the formula.
It's not the formula. You have 2 freshmen in the backcourt. You're relying on a lot of X factors, right? That's kind of the way that I look at Purdue. Is like a lot of things got to go right for it to go right. And I don't like that. There's too many variables of this guy. Ethan Morton needs to be doing this. He needs to get you 8 points. Mason Gillis needs to get 2 or 3 threes. It's like all these if and, conditional statements. That's what I don't like about Purdue. And we all know this. You play in the Big Ten. You play in your conference. The Big Ten officials know Zach Edey as your player of the year. Zach Edey's going to get taken care of. We're going to get to the tournament. An SEC officiating crew or a Big 12 officiating crew has that team. They call 2 quick fouls on Edey. He's sitting on the bench.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
And then you're watching this team, and Edey's on the bench, and they're getting beat by 8-10 points or whatever it is, and they're playing Akron or whoever the hell they're playing, and you're saying to yourself, "Oh my God!" Or they're playing Colgate. Let's say they're playing Colgate. They're playing Colgate, and Colgate's got a 12-point lead. Zach Edey's got 3 fouls, and he's on the bench in the second half. And you're like, how is this team the number 1 overall seed or whatever they are? And that is what concerns me about Purdue. But they have – I do think there is because of 2019 and the Virginia game with Diakite and that shot, and they should have won that game, and they fouled when they were up 3, and it ends up backfiring. I do think there's some sort of karmic duty that's going to come back to Purdue where they make a Final Four. I don't know if it'll be this year. I don't know if it'll be next year. I don't know if it'd be when those guys are juniors, Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith. Maybe when they're juniors, that would be the year they go to the Final Four. I know Matt Painter's going to go to a Final Four with this Purdue team for the first time since 1980. I really do believe that in my heart of hearts. But like you guys said, it's hard for me to look at this team, understand the Big Ten, and think that it's going to be the year for Purdue. I especially after the Indiana games. Both Indiana games really made me feel more excitable about Indiana's chances in the tournament than Purdue. And I don't feel good about either one of them. But between those two, the fact that Indiana looked better, that concerns me.
I thought Illinois was really going to break through in 21 with Io and Kofi on Illinois. That was
Me
my
too.
squad. I was like, these
Yeah.
guys have it. They're going to win it. And it just wasn't. But Griff, what were you going to say? Go ahead.
I was going to say, this Purdue team just feels like the exact opposite of the Purdue team that I believed in. I don't remember what year exactly it was, but they beat Tennessee.
Robbie Hummel.
That's why I remember it so much. Carson Walker, I think, was on that team. Or that may not be his name. It's Carson something. But
Carson Edwards.
Yeah, Carson Edwards. And there was this scrawny white dude who just absolutely gave Tennessee buckets. He drained like a 3 in Grant Williams' face with like 20 seconds to go, and I will remember it for the rest of my life. Like, I just drowning in Tennessee fans' tears. Like, but
I love that. That's what you remember about Purdue. You're like Tennessee fans crying.
Exactly. Yeah, that's just the way my brain is wired.
Let's talk about Tennessee. I think Tennessee is a team. I think they're a good team, but I think they are actually designed to just absolutely drub bad teams. Like Georgia, not a great team. They are so suffocating defensively, but if you can make shots on them, which teams in the NCAA tournament, they can make shots. And I think if they get a tough draw with a team that can really get them running up and down the floor, they're going to have some issues. And that could come a little earlier than a lot of people expect.
Yeah, I think Tennessee and Houston are the two teams that fascinate me. And the reason why they're fascinating is because they dictate the terms of the game, typically. And I think Houston does it more consistently than Tennessee does. But in general, the physicality of the game, they can kind of, say, this is how this game is going to be played. We're going to limit you to 60 possessions. Alabama, they lead the country in pace, and they lead the country in possessions. I think it's like 78 possessions per game. But Tennessee and Houston are going to be playing a totally different game. I just think Houston's the better version of Tennessee as far as being able to dictate those terms and to be able to do it consistently. And I think that they have the athletes across the board that can make it work. So both teams, I think, are title-type teams. I just think that Tennessee is the B version of Houston. You know what I mean? So, like, Houston, I see in the Final Four, and I see them potentially winning the title. And Tennessee, I'm like Sweet 16, best-case scenario, Final Four. That's kind of like the ceilings in my mind of those two teams. I love Zakai Ziegler. I really do. I think he's a great guard. I like Vescovi. I like their guys. I really
Ziegler
do.
just went down with an ACL, didn't he, too?
Did he really?
I think so. I think he tore his ACL, so I think he's done.
Oh, my God. So throw that out. Now Tennessee is 100% not going to the Sweet 16. That is damning news. But Rick Barnes in general, like, I love Rick Barnes. He's always been very nice to me. I think he's a really good basketball coach. I think he understands the game at the highest level. But there is something mentally or something, I don't know what it is, with him and March where it just doesn't quite compute. And so it's hard for me to buy into Tennessee. I tried to talk myself into Tennessee all season long. I really have, because I want them to be good for my own selfish purposes, just because I know some people there. But I think if you're talking about defensive teams that can really make a run, like Houston is one that I would lean into as opposed to Tennessee. But we'll see.
Yeah,
I love Houston.
It's interesting too, because that first round, that 3-14 game, I think they would draw the SoCon team, and the SoCon is not to be trifled with. We thought Chattanooga was going to make some noise last year too. We're from around there, which explains our hate for Tennessee. They lost They lost on that buzzer beater in the conference finals, and they got a couple of tough teams this year. I don't think Tennessee would lose first round. Like I said, they're built to beat up on bad teams like that, but Sweet 16 is going to be a tall task for them.
Sweet 16 would be like okay, we're okay. No concern. Like, we're not going to hit the panic button. We're not going to worry about anything. It kind of just keeps the status quo. And if I'm Rick Barnes, if we make the second weekend, we're fine. That's what I kind of tell myself. So that would be my outlook as a Tennessee fan.
I agree. All right, we'll switch. Unless you have any more teams, Griff, I don't know if you have anybody that in this tournament you're looking at them and you're just saying pretender, somebody that you're just not super high on.
I don't have a March like a tourney NCAA tournament team, but a team that I'm probably going to take a future on just as a long shot to win their conference tourney. Villanova. They've gotten so hot recently, dude. I feel like I'm gonna get pretty good odds on it. I don't know. I could see them win it for sure. Like, I think Marquette's really good. I think Xavier's pretty good. But, dude, they could do it for sure. They got dudes.
I think so. I mean, Villanova is one of those, like I was saying, with Kentucky, Carolina, Duke, whatever. It's kind of one of those things where they get in Madison Square Garden and they expect to win. which is they have Cam Whitmore, who's a top 5, top 10 pick. I mean, they have the talent there. And I'll be quite frank with you guys, and this is no knock on Kyle Neptune at all. It's just more of a tip of the cap to Jay Wright. But if Jay Wright was coaching Villanova, I think they could be a national championship type team.
No doubt.
To be quite honest with you.
Without a doubt.
So that
Jay Wright, love that man. I always had just like
right.
this deep love for Villanova because of Jay Wright. He ran that place like it was the Navy, man.
Yeah, and it was like, even if you didn't have any affiliation with Villanova, you had nothing but respect for him. Like 2018, that title run, I think the 3 most dominant teams that I ever watched in my life was 2001 Duke, and I say that as someone who hates Duke, so this is objective opinion. 2001 Duke, 2009 Carolina, and 2018 Villanova. Those 3 teams were absolutely dominant, and there was no question of who the best team was at the end of the year. But I think if Jay Wright was coaching this team, Villanova's in that conversation. The one team that I see in the Big East tournament that has my attention, just because I think that they're a good tournament team with the way that they play, is UConn.
Yeah,
I think the Huskies, they're a really good tournament team. We saw that at the Phil Knight Invitational. They're going to be a tough out for anybody. And I kind of like how many people have gotten off the scent of UConn. You know what I mean? Like everyone's on Creighton and they're talking about Marquette.
Right.
And I just feel like Connecticut is that team that's just kind of hanging around. They have all the talent. They got these 2 bigs in Sunogo and Klingon that can really do some stuff. Hawkins is going to be potentially a lottery pick. So UConn is the team in the Big East. I like Villanova a lot, but if there was a team outside of the long shot of Villanova, I feel like UConn is a team I would lean on. And I think they're supposed to play Marquette early on, and I could see them upsetting Marquette and making a run.
That'll be a fun game.
That would be huge for them too, to get that win early. A team though that I have like this weird obsession with in the Big East, and I've had it for like the past 2 years. Providence.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is.
Chris Providence, Hawks legend.
Yeah. I'm obsessed with Providence.
I mean, how could you not? I mean, they're a fun team. You know, Bryce Hopkins comes from Kentucky, right? And he's kind of like this great story about a transfer that leaves, doesn't get an opportunity. Then he's been great with Providence, and Ed Cooley's just fun. Like, who doesn't like
awesome.
Ed Cooley?
Yeah.
I mean, that's we were at the Big East tournament last year, myself and Mark Titus doing our show, and I fell in love with Ed Cooley just in person. Like, I was already in love with Jay Wright, so I didn't fall in love. I just kind of confirmed my love. But Ed Cooley, I was like, this is a man that I can get down for. This is a man that I respect. So Providence has a soft spot in my heart as well.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Let's talk some more sleepers too. So one team that I really have my eye on, and I try not to fall into the trap of, repeat Cinderellas. I think Oral Roberts is going to win a couple games, and I say a couple. I might mean 3. The returning Max Abbas, he's from the 2021 run. He's averaging like over 20 points a game. He's been nuts. They have his name's escaping me. They have a guy that's 7'5" that can shoot threes. He shoots like 38% from 3. He's nuts.
Yeah,
and
I can't. I know you're talking about
the makeup. They have the makeup. I really like Oral Roberts going into this tournament. They're one of those teams too. They're probably going to get a tough draw, but I really think they can beat somebody that they shouldn't. Who are they supposed to play round 1? Let's see. They might get San Diego State. That's going to be a 12-5.
I don't believe in the Mountain West at all. I'll say that.
There's a
12-5
I love
right
watching.
There. I love watching Mountain West basketball at like 11 o'clock at night on any given weekday. But when they get to the tourney, I do not like betting on them.
And who their next draw would probably be after that is Indiana, a Big Ten team. And that just feels like there's 2 for Oral Roberts right there, and they're right back in the mix of things.
And Max Asmus is, like you said, he's been there. I mean, him and O'Banner, who's now at Texas Tech, that was their little duo that beat Ohio State and went on their run to the Sweet 16. So, I feel like, as we all know, the upsets are coming. And, a team like Indiana, I like Indiana. I really do. I think that they have Jalen Hood-Schifino has kind of changed the dynamic of that team, especially with Xavier Johnson going down. But, it's one of those things where, because of the fandom of those programs, the hype or whatever you want to call it gets so astronomical that, we got to get back to reality a little bit. Like, Indiana's not going to the Final Four. Yeah. But that's where we are now, where you talk to someone that's a Big Ten fan, they're like, I don't know, man. I feel like Purdue and Indiana could be in the Final Four. And look, if that happens, that'd be great. Like, it'd be good. I would love to watch it. But that like you said, that draw right there would be great for someone like Oral Roberts, because the Vegas and the people would be all over those other teams. And Oral Roberts isn't going to be afraid of anyone, and Smith can have 30 points in any game. That's just who he is.
Yeah. Another tough draw, but another team that I really, really, really like is UNC Asheville.
Yeah,
they got the two best players in the whole
Asheville.
conference. Drew
Right.
Pember, Ty John Jones. They're 5th in 3-point shooting in the country. I love UNC Asheville if they can win out, but I think they're going to be a 16 seed, unfortunately. And I think they might draw Houston. That's kind of the projection right now. That would be a little rough. But if they can stick to a 15 seed, I would absolutely put my money on them to be a 15-2 upset.
Or a Purdue 1 seed and then a 16 seed. That would be
now hold on.
Awesome.
Don't get me too excited.
I think Virginia broke the seal. I think we're due another 16-1. And I'm not saying it's gonna be this year, but I think we're due another 16-1 soon. Just because once UMBC did it, I think it made it possible. It's kind of like with all the world records, right? If someone sets a time, that means that time is possible. Then all of a sudden someone breaks that time and yada, yada, yada. It's like the human mind, once it, believes in the fact that it's possible, anything is possible. So I think a 16-1 could be possible with a team like UNC Asheville. And I think a lot of people forget UNC Asheville had Maceo T, who ended up going to Baylor and leading them to a national championship. But Maceo, when he was at UNC Asheville, he was one of my favorite players. I mean, I was like, this guy is unbelievable. Let's get him on the main stage, and all of a sudden he goes to Baylor and is one of their starting guards to win a national championship. So UNC Asheville has some talent. They're all these teams are so close because of the transfer portal with the talent that weirdly nothing is gonna break my brain, right? UMBC kind of broke my brain, but DeAndre Hunter didn't play, so at some level I could have an excuse and explain it off. But UNC Asheville is a fun team. I love that you know that. That makes me happy. I'm glad someone's watching UNC Asheville.
We thrive on mid-majors. We're big mid-majors guys.
Yeah.
I love Kent State going into the tourney. There's a couple teams, but who do you have on your radar though? Who's your sleeper? Who's your if you got a couple, throw them out there. But who's your sleepers?
Yeah, I mean, wow, a sleeper team. I mean, I guess in my mind, I have always played the title card. So who can win a national championship as a sleeper team. And this isn't a mid-major, it's a power conference team, but there's a team that I think could make a run that I maybe it's my own nostalgia or whatever, but I think NC State can make a run. I really do. And I think NC State, just because of the way that they press and the guard play that they have with Joyner and Terquavion Smith and Casey Morsell, I'm a sucker for 3 guards. When you have 3 guards that are legit and that they know how to do it, like what Baylor did in 2021, I don't know. You have my attention. So NC State is obviously not a mid-major. This is probably not the answer that the Sharps want to hear, but a team that I could see in Houston that makes no sense, kind of like 2017 with South Carolina, like I mentioned before. That is a team that makes no sense, but also makes a ton of sense to me. That they would be with DJ Burns, who is, the Big South Player of the Year at Winthrop and then comes and transfers there. He's been a great resource for them. They can play inside out. And a guy like Terquavion on that stage, thinking about his draft stock and things. NC State is a team. I think there's a chance that we either have a very chalk Final Four or a very insane Final Four.
Yeah,
I agree.
And the insane Final Four to me is NC State in the Final Four, and everyone's I don't know. I kind of like State to win it all. 40 years after 1983. So, that would be that's a team I can't get out of my brain, NC State.
Well, another one that you brought up too earlier is Colgate.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, all their starters are in double figures. I think they're 5th in the nation in assists. Good offensive team. I think Colgate's another team. Griff, who's your sleepers?
Listen, mid-major, a team, if they can get there, I don't know what they really look like in terms of projections. I think they really need to win their conference tournament. UAB, if they can get there.
Oh, little Jelly Walker.
Jelly Walker and Eric Gaines, dude. Eric Gaines is a baller, too.
And, where were we? Were we in the Bahamas?
Yeah, it
was Maui. I can't remember.
No, it wasn't Maui. It was the Bahamas Classic or something like that. I don't even remember, but – yeah, they did tear us up. We played good with them for a half, and then we couldn't make shots. But I like Jelly Walker and Eric Gaines. I mean, I'm a sucker for guards when it comes to the NCAA tournament. So if you've got 2 guards that I think are pretty good, I'm gonna feel good about you.
Yeah, I mean, I like UAB's team, and I do that Asheville tournament, the Asheville Championship. I'm the little brand ambassador or whatever for it, and UAB's playing in it next year, and they're they're a tough team. They're always interesting. You know what I mean? Like UAB, like they're a little under the radar, but then you start looking at them, you're like, oh yeah, UAB, they got some guys, they got some dogs. So yeah, that's a good one. And I watched them beat Western Kentucky the other night. And they played pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll have to win their conference, but I think Southern Miss out of the Sun Belt is another good one. I think they're solid as well. Drake's
always fun.
Drake's fundamental. They're a very fundamental team. They're like your dad's favorite team. They're like they got like all seniors. They play the game the right way. You know, they're a very they're pass heavy. They play good defense, efficient shooters. Yeah, I think Drake's another solid choice. There's so many teams, but as soon as the 64 shakes out, I'm going to have to really dive into it and see which mid majors I like. We have a strategy that whenever we bet, we pick except for the 8-9 and the 1-6 team, we always pick the underdogs, and it profits every year. Every single underdog.
I love that.
Just the spreads, not the money lines, just the spreads.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to adopt a system for the tournament because I mean I guess I could do that, but I've been playing all season long. It's been if an unranked team at home is favored over a ranked team, it's an autoplay, and it's been cashing so much all year. And like when they're not playing games at home anymore, I'm not gonna know what to do.
Right. One other team I wanted to mention, Charleston. College of Charleston.
Yes, I had Charleston on my list too.
I was like, there's one. I was kind of blinking as I was sitting here. I was like, there's a team that I watched this year that I'm like, they have my attention. And if Charleston doesn't win the CAA tournament and UNCW does, or Hofstra for that matter, Speedy Claxton, my guy at Hofstra. Yeah, I think whatever team wins that conference tournament in the CAA, that would be even if it was like Towson, you know what I mean? It's like.
I was gonna say Towson.
I like Towson.
Right for us. Towson is probably undefeated against the spread. They are they are a scrappy bunch. Yeah, those are the three I had my eyes on.
I think those would be great. And then one other team against the spread that will be in the tournament that is another ACC team is Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is another team that I think a lot of people are off the scent on. And I think I saw that they were like 20-8 or something against the spread this year. Pittsburgh. So that's another team that if you're sharp and you just want to make some money, that throw some money on them.
That's like one of the only teams that I've like faded Miami with this year because like I hated betting against Miami because I love watching them.
Right.
And it fell into the system. Unranked team at home favored over ranked team had to play it. You got no choice at that point. And so they did win. So, but yeah, I like Pitt too.
Love that.
All right, Tate. This has been great. We really appreciate your time, man. This has been so much fun.
Of course.
Last one I'm going to send you off with. If you could build your perfect Final Four, just forget all the seedings, who's in whatever's side of the bracket. Forget all that. 4 teams, your perfect Final Four, your ideal Final Four. Who do you got?
Yeah, ideal Final Four. Here we go. I got the reigning national champions, Kansas. I think that look at the quad record that they have. I think they have 15 quad 1 wins. They have the belt. I want to see those guys at the ultimate peak. So I want to see Kansas there. And I want to see a rematch of the national championship game. I want to see North Carolina, Kansas in the Final Four in an ideal setting. And especially Carolina as like a 9 seed in the Final Four playing Kansas, who's the number 1 overall seed. That's what I want. And then on the other side, I want to see the Houston Cougars. I want to see Kelvin Sampson. I want to see that group there. I think they're a very tough team. I think they're a fun team. And then I think the 4th team in the Final Four is going to be UCLA. I want to see UCLA. I want to see Tiger Campbell. I want to see Jaime Jaquez. And if you give me those 4 teams, those are all 4 teams I could talk myself into. They deserve to win the national championship, if they're all there. Kind of like last year in 2022, other than Villanova with the injury, obviously. But everyone healthy in New Orleans, you're saying to yourself, wow, Duke could win it. Carolina could win it. Kansas could win it. If Villanova's all healthy, they could have won it. So that's the ideal Final Four to me, where nobody really knows and everybody is kind of trying to talk themselves into what they see. And the idea in my mind of a Houston playing a UCLA and a Carolina playing a Kansas in sort of a weird rematch, I would be all for it. So that would be my 4.
I love that.
See, you got 3 of mine, so I'll just bounce off yours.
Yeah,
before
please.
I go to Griff. I got Houston, Kansas, and UCLA. I want to see Kansas State. I think Kansas State is a very fun, very frisky team. And
love
then we got Kansas State, a little UCLA, Houston. I think that would be a fun matchup too. That would be my 4, though.
That's a great call. Kansas State is not getting the respect they deserve. So for all the Kansas State fans, I see you. I appreciate you, and you deserve more respect. Jerome Tang should be Coach of the Year. There you go.
Yeah, I love Houston. Obviously, I'd have Houston and Kansas in there for sure. Those are two teams I love watching. And then honestly, I'm kind of with you, Tate. I think one SEC ACC team got to be in there, and I would go with Miami and Texas A&M. I would love to see Texas A&M make a run. I really like them a lot. I've watched them all year, and I really like them. That would be my fourth.
And Buzz Williams is like somehow completely underrated as far as the coaches in college basketball. No one's talking about Buzz Williams enough. And I think with it being in Houston, we're going to have Texas teams in the Final Four, if that makes any sense. Like, I think that we're going to have a Houston and a Baylor, or we're going to have like a Texas A&M and a Texas. Like, I don't know what
What
Texas
if we had
teams?
the all Texas Final Four?
We
Texas,
could.
Texas A&M, Baylor, and Houston. That would kind of be electric.
Right. I just feel like for whatever reason, the Texas TCU could be in that conversation. There's going to be some Texas teams in there. So there you go.
We had some TCU folks that tuned into the show for a little while. I think they have since unsubscribed, but yes, TCU is a solid team.
TCU's in it. TCU, you got a chance. I'm pulling for you.
Hey, exactly. You know what? I'm pulling for them too. I always, all year, not to pivot to too much football, but all year I was always telling people that you sleep on TCU. They're always down, and you always count them out, and they come back and they don't die. And I would love to see their basketball team make a run because they deserve it. Because
until the national championship game, and then they died pretty
died hard
casually. Yeah. But that was fun though for you guys. I enjoyed watching that because, like I said, I was a kind of like deep down, like I like Georgia football. So I was like, man, I've never seen anything like this. So kudos to you guys. Congratulations. I haven't talked to you since that happened. That was one of the biggest ass beatings I've ever watched. So congratulations to the Bulldogs. Kirby Smart.
I'm just, it wasn't as sweet as the first one. It'll never be as sweet as the first one, especially beating Nick Saban. But this was a rare occasion where I really didn't watch the second half. I just went out in the streets and started acting like a fool.
It was over. It was over like when it was 17-7, and then you guys scored again. I was like, okay, well, I guess that's game over. Good night. See you later.
Yeah, I was at the Peach Bowl against Ohio State, and I genuinely think my heart stopped for a second whenever that kick went up, and so I deserved that one. I needed one that wasn't competitive.
Right. That was really the title game right there. But I'm glad that you got away because, again, like I said, the South's got something to say. So I know the ACC and the SEC we're supposed to be rivals, but at the end of the day, sometimes I just have to, I'm like, I guess I got to pull for Georgia here against the Big Ten. So I appreciate you guys making that happen. And as soon as the Super Conference comes, Carolina, Virginia, we're ready to come. You guys sent us the contracts, we're ready to sign it. So
I love
that was Kirby's first game, wasn't it? Was UNC?
Yeah, it was.
I think so.
Yeah, it was. We played Grayson Lambert and Jacob Eason in that game.
And I was at that game. I was at that game in Atlanta, Georgia, 2016. What a time. We had Mitchell Trubisky as our quarterback.
Yeah.
We should have won that game.
Nick Chubb's first game back from a torn ACL. He went for like 200 yards.
Oh, he ran all over us. It was a classic ACC football versus the SEC.
Yeah. We got to get you one of those split jerseys like Travis and Jason Kelsey's mom. We'll get you the half Georgia, half UNC.
Yeah, house divided. There you go.
All right, Tate, thank you so much, man. This has been awesome.
Of course.
Once again, sub to One Shining Pod. Follow Tate on Twitter, Instagram, whatever. One of the best college basketball minds there is. You've heard it on the show if you've made it this far. It's been such a great time, man. We'll probably have you on at some point. We'll talk a little basketball maybe before the season. But thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Of course, guys. Appreciate you, and go Dogs.
Yes, sir.